Hi everyone, welcome back to Steam Flow. Today we're checking out Assassin's Creed Unity on the Steam Deck because the game is currently 85% off at just €449, which is the lowest price it's ever been. That deal runs until September 14, so let's see if it's worth grabbing. Now Unity is known for being a bit rough when it first launched, but over the years Ubisoft supposedly patched it up and it should be actually a pretty good place right now. So can you run it on the Steam Deck, and should you? Let's break it down. Now, before I jump into performance, I wanted to talk about the setup a little bit. As you probably know, Ubisoft games usually come with the caveat of running Ubisoft Connect, their proprietary launcher, and when you first launch Assassin's Creed Unity, it will ask for your Ubisoft username and password, even if you just want to play it offline. So if you play it online, it will ask you only once, but if you do want to play it offline, that's without any internet connection or with the Steam Deck set to offline mode, it will ask for your email and password every time. But once you're logged in, you can select play offline and the game will work completely offline without any issues. So if you're in a place where you have no access to internet whatsoever, that's fine, you can still do it. Now jumping into performance, Unity is a bit of a mixed bag even all these years later. I did improvise a little bit of a benchmark, testing low, medium, very high and ultra settings, and even at the lowest settings you can't really keep a stable 60 FPS. At ultra you can't keep a stable 30 FPS, but somewhere in between I'm going to give you a couple of different presets depending on what you want to do. So if you want the best visuals, I recommend capping the game to 30 FPS and running it with these settings. Environmental quality, set that to ultra high, texture quality ultra high, shadows low, ambient occlusion set to SSAO, anti-aliasing MSAA 2 times, and bloom you can keep that on or off depending on your preference. At these settings the game looks fantastic. You get around 4 hours of battery life and it will dip a little bit below 30, sometimes to 28 or 29 FPS, but it will be pretty stable. Unfortunately, at none of these settings the game will be fully stable unless you use Lossless Scaling, but we'll talk about that later. Now the next preset I have for 45 FPS, especially on the OLED. If you prefer a little bit more smoothness, set the environmental quality to very high, texture quality to high, shadows to soft shadows, ambient occlusion to SSAO, and anti-aliasing to FXAA. Again, bloom, you can keep that on or off, and here you get around 3 hours of battery life. And the game I think still looks pretty good. This is actually my preferred setup. Now the setting that has the biggest impact on your FPS will actually be anti-aliasing. Between FXAA and MSAA 2 times, you'll see FPS drops of more than 10-15 FPS. So this is the one that really changes how the game looks. I'm going to have it on screen right now. You can see the difference between FXAA and MSAA. There's going to be a lot of jittering going on here, especially around the facade of buildings. So if you don't mind that, you can set it to FXAA, but if you do mind it, you're going to have to set it to MSAA and play at a lower FPS. Now I'm interested, do you prefer better visuals almost at ultra settings at 30 FPS, or do you want smoother action at 45 FPS? Drop it in the comments. I'm really curious to see which camp you're in and what people prefer overall on the Steam Deck. Now I also want to talk about lossless scaling. You can push for 90 FPS on the OLED or 60 FPS on the LCD with lossless scaling on medium or even high setting, and it does reach it. You occasionally notice some stutters to 85, 88. There's going to be some unstable frame pacing, but for the most part, it will be pretty stable. And it will be very playable. However, there's going to be some artifacting, especially around some of the menu items, like on the top right, you can see it artifacting a little bit. When you move really fast, Arnold's head is going to jump up a little bit, up and down. These are some things that you may notice or you may not care about. If you do want to play it at lossless scaling, you can absolutely do it at 90 FPS. That's an option. Now, if you want to know my specific lossless scaling settings, this is 2-time lossless scaling with performance mode on and flow scale set to 85%. Now, another thing which I'm not sure to put with graphics or UI, the game is actually meant to be played at a 16:9 resolution. It does support 16:10, but it stretches it up and down. So if you don't want to play with black borders, you have to play in the stretch position. And some of the characters look really weird stretched out, your character specifically. So this is an option. If you do want to play at 16:9, you can still do that, or you can stretch it. That's, I think, personal preference. Now let's talk about the battery life. At 30 FPS, high settings, the first preset I gave you, you get about 4 hours of battery life. This is great for long sessions. You can absolutely push this for more battery life. If you set everything to the absolute low, you can probably get around 5 hours of battery life on the OLED. At 45 FPS, the balance settings preset that I personally prefer, the battery life will dip to about 3 hours, which is still pretty great, I think, in my opinion. And 90 FPS with lossless scaling, that will give you about 2 hours and 15 to 20 minutes. And now I think if you're playing on the go, 30 FPS really gives you the best mix of visuals and battery. Now I'm interested, would you sacrifice visuals for an extra hour of battery, or do you always choose the smoothness over that? Let me know in the comments below. Now on to controls. This is a bit interesting. Now the game has a basic controller customization, like you can change Y and X sensitivity, you can adjust vibration, but if you try to rebind the actual buttons, it only shows keyboard keys, not actual controller remapping, even though the game shows you the actual controller buttons. So it does have full controller support, it works in practice, and gameplay feels smooth with controller. However, there isn't really any customization. So in conclusion, I think Assassin's Creed Unity is absolutely playable on the Steam Deck. It's not perfectly smooth, it doesn't seem like they completely eliminated stuttering, but for under €5, I think it's an easy recommendation if you can live with those quirks. Now I'm interested to know, do you travel a lot with your deck, and do you often find yourself not having internet connection? And would being forced to enter your password every launch be a deal breaker when you play this game, or is it something that you can content with? This is really interesting because for me, most of the time I have my foldable keyboard with me, and it's actually really easy to bring that up and enter my email and password without being too much of a hassle. I know it can be a bit weird to do it on the Steam Deck, but if you have a keyboard, it's really not that big of a deal. Again, I don't think most people carry external keyboards with their Steam Deck, so really interested to know if that's going to be a deal breaker for you. Now my personal preference for graphics preset, as I said, is to play it at 45 FPS, and if you don't mind any artifacting, you can do lossless scaling to 90 FPS. It is surprisingly viable, no input lag whatsoever. And yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more Steam Deck content, and if you want more recommendations for games that run great on the Steam Deck, check out my Steam Curator page where I post benchmarks, battery impressions, performance optimization guides, and everything related to games running on the Steam Deck. Also, you can join my Steam group where we have Steam Deck conversations. Both links will be in the description below. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.